We are live. You're live after a long time. A very interesting conversation I had with a friend. A lot of different friends, but specifically right now, a good conversation fills you up. It's pretty cool. Today I was at a bookstore. I was at one of the bookstores at Vancouver, Paper Hound. Beautiful bookstore. A lot of good light. They didn't have any chair, so you couldn't sit. You're just hurting all the time, but good spot for all the books. And as you are reading a book, as you pick up a book, you are just going around, you're just walking around and you find more and more books. And I thought that was really cool because there's so many books that it's hard to decide that, okay, what do I even spend my time on, what do I even invest in. But once you are reading a book, and as you're walking around, you're thinking of different ideas, and you're walking around the room and you're scanning, you spot other books that you might have not seen before. And that was pretty cool. I was reading a lot of books over there, just like skimming through, but then I just randomly picked up a magazine. And this magazine was Hacker Quarterly, something like that. And there was this random page that I opened up. It was called a hacker perspective. And it was amazing. So this hacker is basically talking about his story, and he has so many interesting ideas over there. I clicked pictures. Maybe I'll read it, but let's see. What do I remember? He talks about the idea that people think of a hacker as someone who breaks into system, but it's not breaking into system. He is curious. A hacker is curious. A hacker wants to understand how things work. Yes, if you have a radio over here, the company, it comes with a manual, it comes with instructions of how to use it. But what if I open it up? What if I try to control everything? I don't want just to use it how the builder or how the person who wanted to build this thing wanted me to use. I actually want to break it open, and I want to control it, and I want to see if I can make something work. What if these two things that are not related to each other, what if I do something over here and make something happen? And it was very interesting. He was talking about this hacker perspective, and he was really leaning towards the idea of curiosity, that you have to be curious. You are just being curious, and as the world is constantly changing, how do you adapt to it? You don't adapt to it by feeding more and more information and taking more information by other people. You adapt by moving by yourself. You adapt by being curious and learning by yourself instead of waiting for someone else to create a document, create a manual for you to ingest. You are being curious about the world, and you are mixing things together, and you are working with it and finding your own way towards it. This guy, his name was Matt the Maker, something like that. But this was the core idea. Absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved it. So let's see. Here's one thing. Being a hacker also means living in a permanent state of learning. Technology changes faster than anyone can keep up with, but the hacker mindset adapts. The specific tools don't matter. Curiosity does. Whether it's a modern AI accelerator, decades old terminal, or an embedded board no one remembers, the same principle applies. Figure it out, make it do something new, document it, and share it. The joy isn't in ownership; it's in discovery. I love this. I love this. I'm really happy that we are now finding other people who might be doing the same thing that I am doing, but in a totally different context. I think that makes it that makes it feel really cool that, okay, the key element is much more human, and the subject doesn't matter. It's more about the quality, and that could be implemented in multiple different domains. And this is very interesting, like finding other people who are just curious. Then you look into Picasso, and Picasso was also really curious. He was also really curious about all the cultures, and he kept learning, and he slowly brought everything that he learned about, everything that he was deeply curious about, into his own work. Let's see. My hacker philosophy starts with the belief that curiosity is sacred. Curiosity is the drive that keeps me awake at night, the spark that makes me take something apart even when I probably shouldn't. Every project begins with a tiny itch of can I or what if. It's rarely about solving a grand problem, it's about chasing a question until it transforms into something tangible. I don't wait for inspiration or perfect tools. I start with what I have, a handful of parts, a soldering iron, and a vague idea, and let the process teach me what I didn't know. That's the hacker's loop: experiment, fail, learn, repeat. Hacking is simply curiosity made physical. It's the art of looking at something that already exists and wondering what happens if I do this instead. That single question repeated over and over has shaped everything I've built, broken, and learned. A hacker thrives on limitations because constraints are where innovation hides. When you only have a cheap board, a sensor, and some wire, every solution has to be clever. That's what makes it beautiful. Hacking is the opposite of luxury engineering. It's about making something extraordinary out of something ordinary. A hacker's elegance comes from necessity, not abundance. Accepting that failure is part of the process. When you know how something really works, you're no longer a passenger, you're in control. The control is addictive, not in a power hungry way, but an empowering one. It's the satisfaction of knowing you can fix what breaks because you truly understand why it broke. This was really cool. And then the last page was also very interesting. It's all about rebellion. It's about freedom, the freedom to learn, to modify, to explore without permission. It's about the confidence that comes from knowing you can make sense of the world around you no matter how opaque it seems. It's about loving problems enough to chase them until they surrender. It's about living in a constant loop of I wonder what happens if I, and actually finding out. I didn't choose to become a hacker, it just happened slowly through curiosity that refused to fade. Every wire connected, every terminal I've configured, every bug I chased brought me closer to understanding not just how machines work, but how I work. The hacker mindset reshapes your brain until everything becomes a puzzle worth solving, and once you see the world that way, there's no going back. You don't wait for solutions anymore, you build them. You don't accept limits, you test them. You don't look for magic, you make it. That's who I am. Someone who keeps taking things apart to understand why they worked in the first place. Someone who builds not for perfection, but for function. And someone who believes that curiosity, the pure, persistent kind, is the closest thing to real freedom there is. His name is Matt Desmarais, aka Matt the Maker. As curious as ever, exploring lots of open source projects. Really cool. Whoa. Oh my god. Alright. Matt the Maker. Tell me more about Matt the Maker. I don't know, can Claude find Matt the Maker? We don't know. Identifying who Matt the Maker is. Oh. Wait, this could be someone in a network organization. Let me search your Google Drive. No, don't go to my Google Drive. What are you doing? Claude's response was interrupted. By the way, they just released this new thing called Dispatch, and Dispatch is pretty cool. Dispatch is again going into this idea that what if you can control your entire system from your phone. Seat is adjusted, and let's begin now. Matt Desmarais, I don't know if you can find it. Searching the web. Desmarais, fascinating person with a wide range of projects spanning maker culture, clean energy, and experimentation. He describes himself as a disciplined, self-taught maker and hacker who has been volunteering since 2007 and making things since 2012. Considered essential for the 21st century on a small budget. Gaming and video streaming, he claims it's about a 10-minute build once you have the parts. AI logic analyzer. listens to speech and analyzes it for logical fallacies, using Whisper for transcription in 3.5 Turbo for analysis. When a fallacy is detected, a rainbow hat lights up red and a count of detected fallacies appears on a segment display. Homemade airsoft scope incorporating infrared GPS and an HG monocle. He also has a personal project using LiDAR data to create maps of Cape Cod showing varying sea level heights. Energy catalyst, a geothermal heat pump startup based in Watervliet, NY. Company offers an Energy Star certified ground source heat pump that repurposes existing hot water baseboard heating infrastructure. $5 million investment from the US Department of Energy plus another $4 million in grants from the New York State and other sources to expand manufacturing in the capital region. Got the idea of working with industrial heat pumps in France. Give me some interesting quotes from him. Quotes. Give me some quotes. Articles featuring Matt for some good quotes. His approach is deliberately taking on challenges beyond his current abilities, saying he pushes himself into unfamiliar territory and then figures his way out on finding his passion for energy. When reflecting on his time, he said energy was going to be his area and that he was deeply passionate about it. After working with Eco Green Energy in Strasbourg, he described Strasbourg. He described as absorbing everything like a sponge and returning to the US feeling like his deep understanding of industrial heat pump technology was kind of a superpower. So he decided to teach himself the skills he felt were necessary on a small budget. Has been enjoying himself since. Matt the Maker. Wow. ChatGPT powers a different kind of logic analyzer. Wow. I really loved his hacker's perspective thing. This is crazy. He's not big. This is from 2023. Wow. He's not big. But his piece was amazing. His piece was amazing. It kind of changed the way how I think. That was beautiful. That was beautiful. It's good to see that how okay, this looks better. All right. What else do we have? What are the latest tweets? What are some latest interesting ideas from Balaji Srinivasan? I don't think Claude can access. Claude cannot access tweets. We'll have to go to Grok. Latest tweets from Balaji. Oh wait. Control plus D to dictate. Whoa. What is this? Control plus D, okay. What are some latest tweets from Balaji Srinivasan? What happened? What are some latest tweets from Balaji Srinivasan? Bro. What are some latest tweets from Balaji Srinivasan? What are some latest tweets from Balaji Srinivasan?
Checking Balaji's latest posts right now. Balaji's been firing off some sharp, big picture stuff lately, mostly on X, where he's always cooking. Here's the freshest heat from March 2026. First up, he's calling out the EV flippening in Singapore. Most new cars there are electric now. Boom, it's happening. Check this out. Clean streets, silent rides, no more gas guzzlers. Then he dropped a massive thread on the Middle East mess. War blowing up oil rigs, prices skyrocketing, tech funding drying up. He says it's insane, could crash everything from food to compute. But hey, silver lining, forces us off oil fast. Solar, batteries, nuclear. Even nods to China scaling coal to chemicals and sci-fi power to X stuff. Here's a visual of what he's warning about. And on geopolitics, libertarianism needs order, like Lee Kuan Yew's iron fist to actually work. Orders, pragmatism, then freedom. Classic Balaji. Theory meets real politic. He's also pushing crypto tools for refugees. Stateless folks need finance too. And yeah, he's still all in on network states, just maybe not in a collapsing US. That's the pulse. Energy shifts, war fallout, and his usual build your own future vibe. What part grabs you most?
Tell me more about his ideas on network states, his recent ideas on network states.
Diving into Balaji's latest on network states.
This is
Cool
incredible.
stuff.
This is incredible. If we can just like chat like this with
Balaji's still all in on network states, thinks they're the real successor to crumbling nation states, especially now with global chaos ramping up. His core pitch hasn't changed much since the book, but 2026's got him sharpening it. States are failing fast, so we build opt-in digital tribes that scale into real power. Check this from mid-March. He says networks beat states as a mental model. Inside countries, ideological cliques, online crews, not one blob. Between them, alliances like WEF or BRICS, but looser. China's the outlier, huge, homogeneous, firewall locked, but even they lean on networks. Bottom line, informal ties rule now. Borders are yesterday. Then February, he drops this gem, 1 billion person Chinese superstate versus 1,000 million person network states. Quote, centralization versus decentralization, top down versus bottom up. China rides AI control with their walled garden. We go voluntary, crypto-backed, vote with feet style. No forced nationalism, just communities you pick, fund, and grow. Sounds like startup societies on steroids, and he's tying it tighter to crypto. As rules-based world cracks, wars, sanctions, code takes over. Need on-chain money, companies, even privacy. States will fail, and the network will take their place. Bullish on Solana too. Hints at a Solana network state vibe, like blockchain native governance. He's not blind to pushback. Networks need order, encryption, maybe even human verified gates against AI fakes. But yeah, the vision's evolving. Less utopia, more survival toolkit for when empires wobble. Visuals help. Here's how he maps it. Scattered nodes, no single flag. Wild part, feels closer every crisis. What do you think? Join one or watch from the sidelines?
what are the latest updates of his network state in Forest City?
Digging into Balaji's Forest City network state, let's see what's fresh.
This is incredible, right? If you can keep doing this, that'll be really cool. I also want to test Claude like this.
Balaji's network school in Forest City, his real-world testbed for the network state, is humming along strong into 2026. It's not some dusty theory anymore. It's a living, breathing startup society on that half-empty Malaysian island near Singapore. Think co-living, co-working, crypto vibes, all in a repurposed hotel amid those towering ghost towers. As of March, Balaji himself was hosting big shots like Endeavor Malaysia's team, touring the place, chatting strategy. Shows it's got traction. Over 200 members from 80 plus countries, mixing engineers, founders, creators. They do daily morning burn hyphen sessions, earn an NFT for proof, then deep work, healthy lunches, pickleball, speaker nights on Web3 or wellness. Feels like a boot camp crossed with a wellness retreat.
That's it. Give me the latest quotes from Balaji on network state.
Digging up Balaji's freshest takes on network states right now. Balaji's been dropping some crisp lines on network states this year, mostly tying them to real-world chaos like wars, AI, and crypto's rise. Here's the latest direct heat from March 2026 onward, pulled straight from his X feed. From March 17th, networks are a better mental model than states. Within a state, there are many networks. From ideological groupings to digital communities, they aren't internally homogenous. Between states, the countries themselves belong to networks. All these types of informal networks are becoming more important relative to formal states as the 20th century ends and the internet century begins. He expands and replies, says power shifting to agile nodes, not slow borders. Think IRGC networks versus coalitions that can't even rally. Networks win because they're fast, orderless. Back in February 20th, he doubled down on the China contrast, a billion-person Chinese superstate and 1,000 million-person network states. Then unpacks it. China's top-down, walled garden controlled via AI and firewalls. Ours, bottom-up, voluntary, crypto-fueled. Centralization versus decentralization. Top-down versus bottom-up. And February 5th, tying it to crypto surge. States will fail, and the network will take their place. We need internet capitalism. We need internet democracy. And we need internet privacy. So we need cryptocurrency. Short-term price, irrelevant.
Something weird is happening with the... Yeah, it's not generating the full response. We don't know what's happening. For recap, the network state conference. Now let's test the cloud. Give me the latest takes from Balaji Srinivasan on network state. Hello, hello. Give me the latest takes of Balaji Srinivasan for network state.
I'm not quite sure what you're after here, Prashant. Are you asking about a book or article called Biology 2107 or something related to network state theory? Let me search for what's current in this space. I'm getting results about network biology in general, but I'm not entirely sure what you mean by Biology 22107 specifically in relation to network state. Are you asking about the latest research in network biology? Or are you referring to something specific from a Biology 22107 course? That'd help me give you a proper answer.
Okay, what do you think about? Okay, so what do you, whoa. Okay, this is how it works. Yeah, I think when you're reading is better because when you're reading, you are thinking for yourself. When you wanna think while you are reading. You don't want to be just ingesting information. That ingestion is really important. Yeah. Very interesting. Biology. Let's see. Founder of the network school. Libertarianism in theory requires Lee Kuan Yew in practice. Order and borders are prerequisites for liberty and prosperity. Tolerance and internationalism enables trade and capitalism. Pragmatism about the scope of the state minimizes the scope of the state. The EV flipping is here. China is strong. Zihan is wrong. China is strong. By far the most rapid shift in the world's economic center of gravity happened in 2010. Center of gravity. Wow. 2025. It's somewhere over here in Russia. Reversing previous decades of development. few were considering 10 plus years ago. These constants like shipping lanes did become variables. I many disagree with the sign of his conclusions in terms of what he expects to rise and fall. The genius plan to get the Gulf states caught in the sea crossfire has incinerated much of the funding for LPs, for data centers, and for IPOs. Force majeure, as funding gets yanked, many capital allocators will should be allocating much further down Maslow's hierarchy of needs towards used for basic things like food and energy. We all need energy independence from the Middle East. Pronto. Pronto. It's also fortunate that Elon and China artistically took climate seriously. Now they're going to need to ship 1 billion solar panels, electric vehicles, batteries, nuclear power plants, and the like to get everyone off oil immediately. Tremendous blame for anyone associated with it. It's a no-win scenario to blow up this much infrastructure for so many people, for whatever objective they thought they were going to attain. But unless you're actually in a position to stop the madness, a pragmatic thing to do is scramble to mitigate the fallout to yourself, your business, and your people. Hollywood is over. It's all internet now. Production days in LA are down nearly half, and the entertainment industry is feeling in. A friend who has been working as an editor for over 25 years compared it to a coal mine shutting down. Shoot days, the big picture. Hollywood is over. I'm sympathetic to Rambo. Hollywood's missing movies. On the other hand, for generations, Hollywood's blind spots were obvious. Thanks to the decentralization of media, news stories will get told. Eventually, some will become art. The actual history of communism, the agony of the millions whose lives were poisoned by it, and the century of international deceit that obscured communist reality. A simple but startling truth is that the major conflict of retired democracy versus Marxist-Leninist totalitarianism, the holy war of the 20th century, is almost entirely missing from the American cinema. Is all the stranger since the major conflict of time would seem natural to draw to Hollywood. Self-inflicted. Streaming is a transitional form. It will likely be replaced by AI-generated video over time. Streaming already competes with everything else on the internet. You don't commit to a 2-hour stream. Users click away quickly. Moreover, AI video will reduce the cost of hiring new actors, increase the lifespan of old ones indefinitely. So we'll see Stallone and Schwarzenegger in their prime forever. They will be like Mickey Mouse. In a real sense, American culture is now a finished product, like French culture. It's not like France isn't waiting on baguettes in the Eiffel Tower. Wow. 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 American culture is a finished product. Similarly, thanks to AI, you will see endless remixes of the past glory days of America, especially of the 1980s, but also earlier eras. You already see that now in X, all the romanticized past. That's part of why Hollywood is getting deprecated. You can only tell the same stories, the same sequels. I feel like the entire modern grocery supply chain system is solving for a problem that we created for ourselves. We first created a city where, since we wanted to sell cars, we made all these massive roads, and then that led to this urban sprawl where people are not living together, but people are living further and further from each other in these tiny homes that are spread across acres and acres of land. And now we had to create more and more mechanisms to get products and things that they purchase to their homes. So then we have to create this network of trucks and supply chain, and then same thing goes for the modern grocery system. I feel things would have been much more easier if we just lived in the small tight knit communities. Okay, let's see. I think it's not exactly the idea that I have, but it's a very similar idea that I have. I recently met someone who works in Amazon, who works in the same team for groceries. I was just talking to him about it. I'm like, I don't want to give you too much, what do we say? I'm not trying to give you hate. I'm just trying to understand how you think about it. Like, you are solving a problem that was, like, what do we say? From a first principles perspective, you're solving a symptom, you're not solving the root cause of the problem. A lot of urbanists and historians have written about, and there's real substance to the critique. The post-war American model is, in particular, highways, suburbs, car dependence, big box retail. They create enormous logistical overhead that denser settlement patterns simply don't require. When everyone lives within walking distance of a market, you don't need a last mile delivery network. The casuality isn't quite linear. Cities didn't emerge just to sell cars. Urbanization was already well underway before the automobile. Specific policy choices, federal highway funding, FHA mortgage rules, favoring suburban single-family homes, zoning laws separating residential from commercial actively subsidized sprawl over density. So it's less that cities naturally led to sprawl and more that a particular political economy pushed development in that direction. Other countries urbanize very differently. Dense communities have their own supply chain challenges. Pre-industrial cities had serious problems with food distribution, spoilage, famine, vulnerability, sanitation. The modern cold chain and logistics network, for all its complexity, is partly why a city of 10 million people can eat reliably every day. Small, tight-knit communities work beautifully at small scale, but they historically struggled with crop failures, limited variety, and seasonal scarcity in ways we tend to romanticize away. Scales awkwardly. There are roughly 8 billion people on the planet now. Dispersing into small villages would require vastly more land. Under cultivation would lose the economic and cultural benefits that density enables. The sweet spot that many urbanists argue for isn't really go back to villages, but rather build cities more like Amsterdam or Tokyo than like Houston, dense, mixed use, transit oriented with markets and shops embedded in neighborhoods. Where I think your intuition is sharpest is on the waste embedded in the current system. The amount of fuel, packaging, refrigeration, labor spent getting a head of lettuce from a California field to a suburban big box store 3,000 miles away, only for someone to drive 2 miles to buy it. It's a system optimized for certain economic incentives, not for human flourishing or ecological sense. A lot of people are working on shortening these loops through urban farming, community supported agriculture, walkable neighborhood markets, denser housing. Borrowing the logic you're describing. Yeah, I feel like we should all have meals. We should all have our default meals every single day. Yeah, once in a while when you want to cook your own food at home, or once in a while when you want to try something different, you go out and eat. But in general, I believe that we all should have a system where a standard food, which is a protein, carbs, rice, potatoes, and veggies, should be standard. 2 times food, 2 times meals should be standard for every single citizen. It would reduce all the time that is being wasted on groceries and all the time being wasted by every single person trying to cook their own food. That's so weird. And it's also a great way for people to come together and eat. This is an interesting idea, and it's worth noting that versions of it have existed and do exist in various forms. Communal dining is arguably the historical norm for most of human civilization. The private kitchen in every household is a relatively recent and culturally specific development. The efficiency gains would be enormous. Cooking at scale is vastly more resource efficient than millions of individuals' households, each buying ingredients, storing them often badly, cooking separate meals, and throwing away what spoils. Food waste in household kitchens is staggering compared to well run institutional kitchens. And the time argument is significant too. Grocery shopping, meal planning, cooking, and cleanup consume hours every week per household. For many people, especially working parents, that's not enjoyable time, it's a burden. The community dimension is also real. Shared meals are one of the most reliable ways humans have ever found to build social bonds. Cultures that still practice communal eating, from Indian community kitchens, langars, and Sikh gurdwaras, are a beautiful example, feeding hundreds of thousands daily for free. To university dining halls, to kibbutz dining rooms, often report stronger social cohesion. There are some tensions worth thinking through, though. While different dietary needs and preferences, allergies, religious restrictions, medical conditions, cultural food traditions, taste accommodate the variety, which adds complexity back in, or ask people to conform, which people historically resist. The Soviet era public canteen system and various institutional cafeteria models often struggle precisely because the food ended up bland and uniform and scaled. There's also something worth considering about autonomy. Cooking isn't just labor for everyone. For many people, it's a form of creative expression, cultural connection, or personal care. The goal might be less replace all home cooking and more make communal eating the easy default, so cooking becomes a choice rather than an obligation. What you are describing actually maps closely onto what some urban planners call co-living models, or what certain intentional communities already do. It's a more radical version of something a lot of people quietly want: fewer decisions about food, less waste, more time, more human contact over meals. Tell me more about some successful co-living models around the world. We are so interested in co-living. We are so interested in co-living these days. Incredible. I'll turn on a light. Let's see. All right. Danish co-housing. Danish. Gold standard for what you're describing. The concept originated in Denmark in the late 60s when architect Jan Goodman Hoyer proposed housing with smaller private units and large shared communal spaces, including workshops, guest rooms, communal kitchens. The first co-housing community, Seddamen, was established in Denmark in the early 70s. River Song co-housing. The communal dining piece is especially relevant to your idea. A resident of a Danish outside Copenhagen described how it works in practice. The adults are organized into food teams of about 12 people, and each team is responsible for cooking dinner for roughly 60 residents multiple times per week. On average, the cost works out to about €4.50 per meal. Describe communal dinners as both the social glue of the community and, for parents, a major quality of life improvement. Someone else cooks and cleans up for you most nights of the week. One meal per month in the communal dining room, and in return can come eat dinner cooked by others the remaining nights. Residents typically come 2 or 3 times a week. Cohabitas. Denmark now has at least 110 intergenerational co-housing communities on record, and research from the philanthropic organization Real Dania found that residents of co-housing experience better quality of life and less loneliness. Around 80,000 Danish seniors expressed willingness to move into co-housing, but only about 7,000 units exist. Demand far outstrips supply. Israeli kibbutzim. This is the most ambitious version of the idea ever attempted at scale. Kibbutzim are collective communities rooted in socialism, egalitarianism, and self-sufficiency. Established as agricultural communities where resources were shared and decision-making was collective. Smart density. A model of car-free communal living and sustainable urban planning we could all learn from. Tigania, founded in 1910, today there are over 270 in Israel. Communal dining hall was central to the whole experiment. Workers would eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner together in large communal halls. These served as both the practical center of food distribution and the social heart of the community. Even the furniture choices were ideological. Most dining halls used benches rather than chairs as an expression of communal values. Have given up traditional communal living systems. Residents with jobs don't typically keep their own income and raise their own children. Where violence raged. Communal dining, once a staple of kibbutz life, is now rare. Most families eat at home, though many kibbutzim still operate a subsidized cafeteria. The privatization trend that began in the 80s gradually eroded the collective model, largely because younger generations wanted more individual autonomy. La Casa. I think again, oscillation. The young people, wanted to break out of it. They go around the world. They travel around the world. They are like, okay, let me find my people. You slowly find your people, and then you're like, okay, let's do the same thing that our parents did. The commercial sector has explored in the last decade, though it's often more focused on convenience and affordability than one of the deep communal vision you're describing. There are now over 800 co-living startups globally. Operators like Habit and colonies have scaled significantly by retrofitting existing buildings into medium-sized communities. Communal meals and shared spaces dramatically reduce loneliness, cut costs, save time, build social bonds, efficiency and warmth of the collective, and people's desire for individual choice and privacy. Seems to have found the most durable balance. You have your own home, your own kitchen, your own life, but the default 3 or 4 nights a week is that someone else cook dinner and you eat it with your neighbors. It's essentially opt-out communal dining rather than opt-in, which is subtle but powerful design choice. Opt-out. It's opt-out. Beautiful. We get dinner and washing up done for us 11 times per month. Most of the adults, some of the teenagers, signed up to one of the 4 food teams of 12 people. Each food team is responsible for cooking dinner each week for the 60 people who come along. Ours has dinner 3 days per week. People in the food team sign up to be either head chef comes up with one meal to cook, or a sous chef who helps with the cooking. There are then other jobs assigned to the team, such as ordering the food and packing, washing up after cooking. The head chefs write down the meals on a piece of paper in the communal house a couple of weeks in advance, and residents sign up for how many meals they would like. All the cooking and washing up happens in the industrial kitchen in the communal house. All the eating happens in the main area or back home. There's no shame in having takeaway. The food quality is surprisingly good. At the end of the year, someone tallies up how many meals you had divided by the total grocery spend. On average is €450 per meal. Unsupervised play. My podcast social media bubble is often frequented by Jonathan Haidt. He's written how the way kids are raised today is generally quite detrimental to their well-being, and his antidote fairly simply allow kids to learn to be independent, especially by playing, doing stuff without adults. Also, I'm conceptually bought in on this idea. The practicality seemed a bit tricky to have continued living in Copenhagen. We were in an apartment block, meaning an adult almost always needed to be present to let you into the building from outside. Extra faff going up downstairs. Generally, we were fairly close to the main road, so we never fully feel at ease with kids wandering around school until they were at school age. No cars between the houses, sporadic, wobbly runners, clear boundary. Understand to not cross the road without adult activities, communal sandpit, trampoline, soft play, blackberry bushes. Friends' houses within 30 seconds, vested adults nearby. And a big plus for us as parents is that she doesn't need to be particularly involved. We would have involved always happening through us coordinating a time to go and play with someone else, walking with her down to the playground, transporting her to from friends' houses, keeping an eye on her for public park. Close but not too close. Clearly benefits to having dinner cooked for you and living in close proximity to a trampoline. Wouldn't be worth the cost of constantly feeling looked at or feeling pressured into honestly being part of the collective. Landed on one that has fairly minimal expectations. 2 hours of communal duties such as cleaning the communal kitchen, mowing the grass, doing the accounts, arranging the summer party, and above that, it's as much as little as you want. Similar values. Uncommon thing of living in a co-housing community is interested in chatting to getting to know the neighbors has been apparent at some point. I not found awkward knowing whether I'm being too much by stopping and having a chat with a neighbor. Collective budget which pays for the upkeep development of communal assets. 2 hours per month, communal duties, cooking, washing up per month. Meetings, monthly meeting for any communal updates, decisions to make, any project work we are part of. And this is also very interesting. This idea that don't rely on the government, don't rely that someone else will come and solve problems for you. You or yourself meeting with each other, meeting with people who you care about, with whom you live, and you are making decisions for how to run things. Good value for money isn't all a cost. It's often nice to have a low level socializing with people who you share values with and gradually getting to know. Spectrum of how these Scandinavian concepts practices can be transported elsewhere. The legal setup, a group to kickstart with. Where to start? Simple legal structure for shared stuff, set a monthly fee, define 2 or 3 teams. Food maintenance events to decide how the money gets spent. Innovator, but if that's your highly encouraged to give it a try. Very interesting. The core premise. Cohabitas. Wow. Wow. Very cool. Very cool. Limited vehicle access. Walking and cycling paths. Gathering or group. Resources were shared, decision making was collective over time. They evolved to include various industries such as manufacturing, technology, and services. Minimal private property. Personal possessions were shared among residents. The design promotes social equality and reduces materialistic pursuits. What were some of the issues with the kibbutzim of Israel? Wow, I got what I'm getting at. Now we're getting into the communism and all that, socialism, all that kind of stuff. Let's see. Essentially, a century-long experiment testing the exact kind of communal living you're drawn to. Large debts and low returns. Broader context matters. Experience of dire economic crisis. Inflation reaching 400%. High unemployment. Easy access to credit. Large sums in industry and agriculture without adequate economic justification of financial risk management, because everything was collectively owned. There was no individual accountability for bad investment decisions. Was near 6 billion, or about 50,000 per member. The communal model became a trap. The elderly worried if the kibbutz failed to provide for them again. The lack of personal pensions would be devastating, since they had never accumulated individual savings. The vulnerability of having no personal financial safety then became painfully apparent. The generational tension. This is probably the deepest issue. The founders were ideologically committed. They chose this life. Their children and grandchildren were born into it, and increasingly chafed against its constraints. Some kibbutz members established professional careers outside the community, accumulating power, privileges, and prestige, and the balance between individual values and collective values began to tip. The communal model was attractive when members were themselves impoverished, but the pull to community weakened as their potential standard of living rose. As houses got bigger, more children moved to live with their parents rather than in communal children's houses, had to bow to the demands of families, even though the movement had originally viewed the close-knit nuclear family as a capitalist creation. Once families started eating at home, the communal dining hall, the heart of the whole system, began to fade. As a standard of living rose, as houses got bigger. I think this is it, like the balance of capitalism. Yeah, you have to be individually strong, individually capable, and then you all have to come together within your community and help each other. It's an oscillation. Like, yeah, when you are in a family, what do? You help each other. You are helping each other, you are sharing your resources. But then you also want everybody to pull their weight. You can't be just giving them everything that they want. The free rider and motivation problem. When everyone earns the same regardless of effort, motivation becomes an issue. Work motivation was affected as the balance shifted, and emphasis was placed on social compensation to encourage productivity. The psychologist Bruno, who studied kibbutzim, observed that the absence of private property seemed connected to a certain emotional flatness. He suggested that private property relates deeply to private emotions, and when one is absent, the other tends to be absent as well. Group pressure to conform was particularly strong, and there is ongoing debate about whether the system stifled individual talent. Bright children were still encouraged. Balance. The oscillation. Inequality that emerged during privatization. When kibbutzim privatized, the transition often created new injustices. Monetary compensation based on occupations immediately lowered the standard of living for most members to that of non-professional workers, while managers, many of whom grew up in the kibbutz and received their education at its expense, now earn salaries 5 or 10 times higher than other members. People who had spent decades contributing to the collective suddenly found themselves with no personal savings, no pension, and no property. The counter argument. One analysis argues the story isn't as simple as socialism failed. The kibbutzim that maintained classic socialism are actually the ones that thrived economically with the past generation, continuing to innovate in irrigation technology, manufacturing, and financial services. When money was coming in, nobody minded sharing. It was when the treasury ran dry and living standards were slashed that people started leaving. It's fragile across generations, where you pool all income and property. But the Danish co-housing model, which keeps finances and property private while sharing meals and spaces, avoids most of these failures modes. You don't need people to give up their financial autonomy to get the benefits of communal dining and tightened community. The sweet spot seems to be shared meals and shared spaces but separate wallets. Yeah, I think this is it. It's a fine balance between capitalism and communism or socialism. You want to give people the ability of individuation and going as hard as possible with what they want to achieve individually, but also give them the sense of belonging, give them the sense of, but also have a sense of belonging and have a sense of community and share things, because when you share things, when you take care of other people, it helps you. But that shouldn't mean that you don't have anything of yourself. You do need to be independent. You do have a need for autonomy and self-expression. Let's see what they say. I think it's generally important. It's a balance that most political and economic ideologies get wrong by collapsing to one extreme. Erasing the individual, no private property, no personal savings, children raised communally, everyone earning the same. It worked when people were voluntarily sacrificing for a shared mission, but it became suffocating once that founding energy faded. People need to feel like their effort matters, that their choices are their own, that they can build something that reflects who they are. But the pure capitalist suburban model fails in the opposite direction. You get maximum individual autonomy, your house, your car, your kitchen, your schedule, and minimum belonging. The result is an epidemic of loneliness. Millions of people driving separately to the same grocery store, cooking alone, eating alone, spending enormous time and money on logistics that could be shared. You're free, but you're exhausted and isolated. What you're describing is essentially the insight that autonomy and belonging aren't opposites. They're both human needs, and a well-designed life has to honor both. You can have your own career, your own income, your own space to retreat to, your own creative pursuits, and also have a table you show up to most evenings where someone else cooked and your neighbors are there. Those two things don't conflict. In fact, they probably reinforce each other. It's easier to take risk and push yourself individually when you have a stable community holding you. The Danish model works precisely because it doesn't ask people to choose. You own your home. You keep your money. You have your private kitchen for the nights you want to cook something specific or just be alone. But the default, the path of least resistance, is communal. That's the key design insight. You don't have to force people into community if you make community the easier option. It's also worth noting that this isn't really a new idea so much as a rediscovery of how most humans lived for most of history. The hyper-individualized household is the anomaly. Extended families, village commons, shared meals, collective childcare. That was the norm for thousands of years across almost every culture. What you are articulating is less a radical proposal and more a recognition that we optimized for the wrong thing and now need to find our way back to something more balanced. What were the key ideas of Karl Marx in Das Kapital? Wow. WisprFlow can get the exact spelling of Das Kapital. That's crazy. Dense and sprawling work, but the core ideas can be understood as a connected chain of arguments about how capitalism functions and why Marx believed it contained the seeds of its own destruction. Value of any commodity ultimately derives from the amount of socially necessary labor time required to produce it. A chair is worth more than a stick, not because of market whims, but because more human labor went into making it. Surplus value and exploitation. This is the heart of the whole work. Marx argued that workers produce more value through their labor than they receive back in wages. Or get paid 100. The difference in surplus value is captured by the capitalist who owns the factory. Then see this as theft and illegal since it's built into the structure of the system. The worker has no choice but to accept the deal because they don't own the means of production and need wages to survive. The capitalist profit in Marx's framework is fundamentally extracted from unpaid labor. The means of production, this is the concept that ties everything together. Whoever owns the means of production, factories, land, machinery, raw materials, controls the terms on which everyone else works. Marx saw history as a series of struggles over this ownership. Feudal lords owned the land, so peasants were dependent on them. Capitalists owned the factories, so workers are dependent on them. The specific form of domination changes, but the structural relationship between owners and non-owners persists. The commodity and commodity fetishism. Any object produced for exchange rather than for direct use. He argued that capitalism creates a strange distortion. We start to see social relationships between people as if they were relationships between things. When you look at a price tag, you are actually looking at a crystallized set of human relationships. Who labored, who profited, who was exploited. But the market makes it appear as though value is just an inherent property of the object. This mystification is what allows a system to appear natural and inevitable rather than constructed and contingent. Of the rate or profit to fall. Competition between capitalists drives them to invest more in machinery and technology, what he called constant capital, relative to human labor. Surplus value comes from labor, not machines. This means the rate of profit tends to decline over time, pushing wages down, extending working hours, finding new markets, letting weaker competitors fail, all of which intensify the system's contradictions. Capitalism would tend toward monopoly. Larger firms outcompete smaller ones, wealth concentrates into fewer hands. Middle class gets squeezed down into the working class. Competition paradoxically destroys competition, the reserve army of labor. Pool of unemployed people. Not as a bug, but as a feature. Unemployment keeps wages down because workers can always be replaced. When the economy booms, the reserve army shrinks and wages rise. Capitalists respond by investing in labor-saving technology, which throws people out of work again and restores the downward pressure on wages. Rather than seeing economic crises as accidents of policy failures, they're inherent to capitalism: overproduction, falling profit rates, mismatch between what workers are paid and what they are expected to buy, all create periodic crisis. Consolidates ownership further, sets up the condition for the next one. Spending on what should replace them. The revolutionary conclusions are implied by the analysis. If the system is built on exploitation and tends toward crisis, then the working class has both the motive and eventually the leverage to overthrow it. But the detailed blueprint for a post-capitalist society is largely absent from the text itself. What would he say? How would he analyze the world we are currently in with the abundance that AI is about to bring? And and this is very interesting. I haven't read Das Kapital, but it would be interesting to analyze based on his thesis. How would he look at AI? How would he look at the abundance of AI? Let's see. If you run the current AI moment through Marx's analytical framework, you get some striking conclusions, some of which would vindicate him, some that would generally break his model. I don't know what vindicated mean. Proven right. Okay. Marx would look at AI and immediately recognize the pattern he described with machinery in Das Kapital. When capitalists invest in machines to replace labor, they capture more surplus value in the short term, fewer workers, same or greater output, more profit. AI is this dynamic on steroids. A company that once needed 500 people to process insurance claims can now do it with 50 people and an AI system. The surplus value extracted from each remaining worker increases enormously. The displaced workers join what Marx called the reserve army of labor, pushing wages down elsewhere. You point to the concentration of capital and say, I told you so. A handful of companies are accumulating an extraordinary share of the value being created. The computational infrastructure required to train frontier AI models costs billions, which means only the already massive can compete. The means of production in the AI era, data centers, training data, GPU clusters, are owned by a vanishingly small number of entities. You'll also recognize commodity fetishism operated at a new level when you use ChatGPT or any AI tool. You're interacting with what appears to be a magical product. What's hidden behind the interface is a vast chain of human labor. The researchers who built it, the data labelers who annotated training sets, often in Kenya or the Philippines, for a few dollars an hour. The miners who extracted the minerals for the chips, the construction workers who built the data centers. The AI commodity mystifies its own production even more effectively than a physical product does. Assume that value comes from human labor. This is where AI genuinely strains his theory. Can produce goods, write code, generate designs, and make decisions with minimal human involvement. Where is the surplus value coming from? Would have to grapple with the possibility that machines can create value independently, something he explicitly denied. He argued machines only transfer their existing value to products. They don't create new value, but an AI that writes a novel or designs a drug molecule seems to be doing something that doesn't fit neatly into that framework. You might try to resolve this by arguing that the AI is essentially crystallized past labor. Wow. The work of every programmer, every data labeler, every person. Wow. This reminds me of this biology idea that the French aren't innovating on baguette and Eiffel Tower. It's there. The French culture is now set in stone. And similarly, it goes for the American culture. American culture is set in stone. It is essentially crystallized past labor. The work of every programmer, every data labeler, every person whose writing or images were used as training data. AI isn't creating value from nothing. It's extracting and recombining the value of millions of workers' labor, with the profits going entirely to the owners of the system. It's actually a pretty compelling Marxist reading of the situation and maps onto the real debates happening right now about whether AI companies effectively stole the labor embedded in their training data. Really interesting, because Marx actually anticipated something like this. He argued that capitalism's contradictions would eventually create the conditions for its own transcendence. System drives relentlessly toward greater productivity, and at some point productivity becomes so high that scarcity, the foundation of the whole economic system, starts to dissolve. AI potentially represents that moment. If AI can produce near unlimited intellectual labor at near zero marginal cost, you're approaching what Marx envisioned as the end stage. The productive forces have outgrown the relations of production. The technology can provide abundance, but the ownership structure means that abundance flows to a tiny class of owners while everyone else is displaced. The system can produce enough for everyone, but has no mechanism to distribute it, because distribution is tied to wages and wages require employment. And employment is precisely what the technology is eliminating. Marx would say this is the central contradiction made visible. Capitalism is incredibly good at creating productive capacity and incredibly bad at distributing the results. AI makes the contradiction undeniable. What he would predict, running the logic through Marx, would probably predict something like this: AI will trigger a crisis of employment and demand. As more labor is automated, fewer people earn wages, which means fewer people can buy the products being produced, which means profits eventually fall despite the productivity gains. The system either has to find a way to redistribute through something like universal basic income, which is essentially an admission that the wage labor model is broken, or it collapses into a crisis severe enough to force structural change. You likely argue that UBI under capitalism is just a patch, a way to maintain consumption without addressing the underlying ownership question. The real Marxist question would be, who owns the AI? If a small class owns the systems that produce most of the value in the economy, then even with UBI, you have created a permanent dependent class living on the allowance of its owners. That's not liberation, it's a more comfortable form of feudalism, where Marx's framework falls short. The honest answer is that Marx didn't fully account for a few things that matter enormously right now. He underestimated how much capitalism can adapt and reform itself. Welfare states, labor protections, antitrust regulation, potential UBI are all ways the system bends without breaking. He also didn't have a good theory of information goods, which behave very differently from physical commodities. They can be copied infinitely at zero cost, which breaks a lot of the scarcity assumptions his economics rest on, and he underestimated how much people value autonomy, status, and meaning through work. Even if material needs are met, the psychological displacement of being made economically irrelevant is something this framework doesn't fully address. But the core insight that who owns the means of production determines who benefits from what those means produce is as relevant to the AI era as it was to the industrial era. Maybe more so because the stakes of ownership have never been higher. The difference between humanity owns AI and 5 companies own AI might be the difference between the most broadly prosperous era in human history and the most radically unequal one. Yeah, I believe that once we enter into this age of abundance, the only thing that will happen is that every single human on earth will become an artist, and every single human on earth will chase these flow states where they enter into this engaged intensity to create. They will become an overflow of creation. They will become, everything will be an act of self-expression, because all the needs will be met. They don't have to worry about anything, and the work through which they found meaning is gone. So how they will create their own work, they will create their own values, they will create something that gives them autonomy. Boom, that's good. It's very incredible that you can, every time I use WisprFlow, I'm like, it's amazing that I can give so much context to Claude, so Claude can go run and really give me back something good. Maslow put at the top of his hierarchy self-actualization, would imagine as the default human condition rather than the privilege of a few. It's striking how many different thinkers from completely different traditions converge on the same vision. Something very close to what you were saying. In the German ideology, he wrote about a society where someone could hunt in the morning, fish in the afternoon, criticize after dinner without ever being defined as a hunter, fisherman, or critic. Someone could hunt in the morning, fish in the afternoon, and criticize after dinner without ever being defined as a hunter, fisherman, or critic. His vision of unalienated labor wasn't that people would stop working. It was that work would stop being something imposed on you by economic necessity and become something you choose as an expression of who you are. That's almost exactly your point. It was a it was that work would stop being something imposed on you by economic necessity and become something you choose as an expression of who you are. Nietzsche read something similar from a completely different direction. He wasn't thinking about economics at all. He was thinking about meaning after the death of God. His answer was that human beings must become creators of their own values, not consumers of inherited meaning, but active producers of it. The Ubermensch isn't a strongman, it's someone who creates rather than obeys. Your vision of every person becoming an artist is very Nietzschean in that sense. Once the external structures that dictated how you spend your time fall away, you are left with the fundamental creative challenge of making something out of your existence. And then there's Csikszentmihalyi's work on flow, which gives this a psychological grounding. He found that, wow, economics, philosophy, and psychology, a blend of economics, psychology, and philosophy. Karl Marx, Nietzsche, and Csikszentmihalyi, which gives a psychological grounding. He found that the moments when people report the deepest happiness and fulfillment are moments of leisure or consumption. They are moments of engaged, challenging creation where skills meets difficulty and self-consciousness dissolves. The irony of the current economy is that it gives most people very little access to flow. Most jobs are either too boring or too stressful, and by the time people get home, they are too depleted to create. You're suggesting that removing the economic treadmill would unlock what people actually want to do naturally. I think there's something deeply true in this. If you watch children for the system gets to them, they are exactly what you're describing, relentless creators. They draw, they build, they invent stories, they experiment, they make things with a pure satisfaction of making. Nobody has to incentivize a 4-year-old to create. The economic system doesn't produce the creative impulse, it suppresses it and redirects the energy toward production for others' profit. Strip that away and you might indeed see an explosion of creation unlike anything in human history. The hard question, and I think it's worth sitting with honestly, is a transition. Right now, a lot of people derive not just income but identity and structure from their work. If you take that away suddenly, before people have developed the internal resources to self-direct, you don't necessarily get an explosion of artists. You might get an epidemic of despair. We already see this in communities where industries have collapsed. The problem isn't just lost income, it's lost purpose. Retirement depression is another version of the same phenomenon. People who were forced to work their whole lives sometimes don't know who they are without the structure. So the question might not be whether your vision is right about human potential, I think it probably is, but whether we can build the bridge. Can people who have spent their entire lives being told what to do, what to value, what to produce suddenly become self-directed creators? What does that capacity need to be cultivated, and if so, what cultivates it? Maybe the answer is that it happens generationally. The first generation after abundance might struggle, but the children raised without the scarcity mindset, without the idea that your worth is your productivity, without the exhaustion that kills curiosity, those children might be exactly what you're describing, born into abundance, free to create, finding meaning not in what they earn, but in what they make and who they become. Wow. 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 The first generation after abundance might struggle, but their children raised without the scarcity mindset, without the idea that your worth is your productivity, without the exhaustion that kills curiosity. Those children might be exactly what you're describing, born into abundance, free to create, finding meaning, not in what they earn, but in what they make and who they become. This is really cool. Very cool. Give me some examples of people who were working very basic jobs. They were told what to do. They retired, got into depression because they didn't know what their purpose is. They lost their purpose, and then they ended up finding their purpose. They became self-directed creators. Let's see. Violet bloomers that changed the art world. How to sell online. Rogue art history. Bill Withers, music artist, composer, music department. Anna Mary Robertson Moses. Charles Bukowski. Let's go. Charles Bukowski. Ordinary work, crisis of purpose, the emergence of creator. Grandma Moses. Anna Mary Robertson Moses. Purest example of what you're talking about. She left home at the age 12. Work as a hired girl, doing farm chores for wealthy families. Continued that kind of domestic labor for 15 years. She married a farmer. Raised 5 surviving children out of 10 born. Okay. That's crazy to say. Raised 5 surviving children out of 10 born. Spent decades working on farms in Virginia, upstate New York. Husband died in 27. She continued farming with her son's help until advancing age forced her to retire to her daughter's home, 36. Transition happens, as tending to the farm became physically challenging for a woman in her 70s. Began stitching embroidered pictures. By the mid-30s, as her arthritis worsened, she turned to painting. Wow. Grandma Moses. She began painting in earnest at the age of 78. For most of her life, she considered painting to be a frivolous pursuit. The economic demands of survival simply didn't allow for it. Economic demands of survival. Grandma Moses. Bygone America. Bennington. The museum acquired the schoolhouse in which Moses studied as a little girl, along with a large collection of objects related to her life. Tilt-top table, she painted landscapes and used her as painting table. Large supplies, her paint-stained apron. Large collection of photographs and documents. So beautiful. Yeah, you want to make your life worth preserving. You want to make your life worth preserving. Grandma Moses did that. She began painting in the earnest at the age of 78. For most of her life, she considered painting to be a frivolous pursuit. The economic demands, Anna Mae Robertson, Mary, the economic demands of survival simply didn't allow for it. And then she became one of America's most beloved artists. Her first solo exhibition opened in October 1940, month after her 80th birthday. She was a household name. 53. Wow. That's 93. She appeared on the cover of Time magazine. She painted productively until her death at 101. At an age when most people are retired, she became an inspiration to senior citizens, demonstrating that age need not be a hindrance to a fulfilled life. Crazy. Grandma Moses is an inspiration 101. I think this is it. This is it in Grandma Moses. Let's go. You gotta be working. You gotta be making art until you die. Give me some interesting quotes from Grandma Moses. On starting late, I would never sit back in a rocking chair waiting for someone to help me. I would rather be doing something. Life is what we make it, always has been, always will be. I look back on my life like a good day's work. It was done and I feel satisfied with it. On art and creativity. I paint from the top down. I start with the sky, and then the mountains, and then the hills, and then the houses. Ooh. Rhyme. I paint from the top down. I start with the sky, and then the mountains, and then the hills, and then the houses. If I didn't start painting, I would have raised chickens. I don't know why people call it art. It's just something I do. There's something powerful in that last one, like she sidestepped the whole "is this good enough" trap entirely. I think this is what I'm interested in right now. Like, okay, Grandma Moses. Grandma Moses started painting when she was 70. I think I read 70. And then she painted until 101. 30 years. 30 years of painting. So much art you could have created. Now I started this thing. Kind of started like writing when I was 19. I started my podcast when I was 21 or 22. And then we started streaming a year ago, more than a year ago. And during the stream, we have changed a lot. It's amazing to see the growth. So I'm really excited if we just keep going. If I just keep changing my places and keep adding more inspiration and keep adding more inspiration, keep adding more ideas, keep adding more people, keep adding more live stuff, keep adding more experiences, more activities that I love, more things. Yeah, bring more inspiration, everything. We can make something incredible over here. So the goal is to just keep going. The goal is to just keep going. That's it. On simplicity and memory, I paint my life. My paintings are a record of what I used to see and hear. I never had time to be unhappy. Let's go, Grandma Moses. I paint my life. My paintings are a record of what I used to see and hear. Philosophy disguised as a shrug on age and possibility. You're never too old to start. I'm not going to worry about time. I think you get better as you get older. At an age when most people are retired, she became an inspiration to senior citizens, demonstrating that age need not be a hindrance to a fulfilled life. The striking thing is that the creative capacity was always there. As a child, she painted landscapes using lemon and grape juice. Wow. The striking thing is that the creative capacity was always there. As a child, she painted landscapes using lemon and grape juice. Wow. Then she became one of America's most beloved artists. At an age when most people are retired, she became an inspiration to senior citizens, demonstrating that age need not be a hindrance to a fulfilled life. The striking thing is that the creative capacity was always there. As a child, she painted landscapes using lemon and grape juice. 70 years of labor, of farm labor, didn't kill it. It was just waiting. Bill Withers. Withers was born in a small coal mining town in West Virginia, the son of a maid and a miner. He developed a stutter as a child and later said that he had a hard time fitting in. His father, I'm just curious. Give me some quotes from James Bond. What are some good James Bond quotes? Let's see. He glides through sentences like they are tailored suits, crisp, dangerous, a little amused at the chaos around him. Shaken, not stirred. I think he got the point. Surgical. Do you expect me to talk? No, Mr. Bond. I expect you to die. That's a Smith and Wesson, and you have had your 6. I never miss. Keeping the British end up, sir. Just a slight stiffness coming on in the shoulder. I always enjoyed learning a new tongue. A more human bond. The past isn't dead. You don't get to choose your past. We have all the time in the world. Philosophical undertones beneath the tux. History isn't kind to men who play God. History isn't kind to men who play God. A license to kill is also a license not to kill. His father died when he was 13. He was the first man in his family not to go into the mines. He joined the Navy right out of high school to get away. He enlisted at 17, so for 9 years, doing aircraft mechanic work. After his discharge, he moved to Los Angeles and worked a full-time job making toilet seats at the Boeing Aircraft Company, recording demos on the side at night. Recording demos. He was essentially a factory worker who sang in small clubs after shifts, buying a cheap guitar from pawn shop and teaching himself to play. Standing in the doorway of the factory where he still worked, carrying his lunch pail. At that point, he was already 32 years old. He went on, Ain't No Sunshine. Oh, wow. Wow. I love Ain't No Sunshine. Bill Withers. Ain't no sunshine, no, no, no. Ain't no sunshine, no, no. Really cool. Lovely day. Oh, lovely day. Lovely day. Lovely day. Wow. Bill Withers. Let's go, Bill Withers. But ain't no sunshine, just the two of us. Wow, he got all the hits. Na, 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 just the two of us. Really cool. All right. Charles Bukowski. Let's go. What are the latest moves by Spotify in the age of AI? Dogger, but no less illustrative. He worked a staggering range of jobs to survive: dishwasher, truck driver, mail carrier, guard, gas station attendant, warehouse worker, shipping clerk, parking lot attendant, elevator operator. Mail carrier, guard, gas station attendant, warehouse worker, shipping clerk, parking lot attendant, elevator operator. He also worked in a dog biscuit factory, a slaughterhouse, cake and cookie factory. He tried writing, young, failed. His lack of publishing success caused him to give up writing in 1946, spurring a 10-year stint of heavy drinking. 10-year stint of heavy drinking, wow. nearly dying from a bleeding ulcer. The man who helped him quit his soul sucking job and become a full time writer. Wow. Working as a postal clerk while writing on the side. By his late 40s, he was still a postal worker by day, writing a column for LA's Underground magazine in his spare time. A small press publisher offered him $100 a month to quit and write full time. As Bukowski explained, I have one of two choices: stay in the post office and go crazy, or stay out here and play at writer and starve. I have decided to starve. I have one or two choices: stay in the post office and go crazy, or stay out here and play at writer and starve. I have decided to starve. He was 49 years old. He wrote his first novel in 3 weeks and went on to publish over 60 books. I have decided to starve. He had no hope. Unless it comes unasked out of your heart and your mind and your mouth and your gut. Don't do it. He was himself a late bloomer. Journey of finding his one purpose as his own. That irrepressible impulse to create took decades to coalesce into a career. Ordinary day jobs, Bukowski tried a variety of blue-collar occupations before becoming a full-time writer and settling into his notorious writing routine. Notorious. Fill-in mailman from U.S. Postal Service. No day job or practical limitation can stand in the way of true creativity. No day job or practical limitation can stand in the way of true creativity. He found himself stifled by working for the man. By his late 40s, he was still a postal worker by day, writing a column for LA's Underground magazine by Open City. What are some of the best works by Charles Bukowski? The poetry. Love is a dog from hell. Burning in water, drowning in flame. You get so alone at times that it just makes sense. Charles Bukowski. Na, 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 na. Ain't no sunshine. Na, 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 na. There are worse things than being alone, but it often takes decades to realize this, and most often when you do, it's too late, and there's nothing worse than too late. Grok is crazy. Grok will just give you the entire thing. Grok is like, I don't give a shit about copyright. I'll just give you that shit. Okay. Full text. You get so alone at times that it just makes sense. Close. No distraction. You get so alone at times that it just makes sense. When I was a starving writer, I used to read the major writers in the major magazines in the library, of course. And it made me feel very bad because being a student of the word and the way I realized that they were faking it, I could sense each false emotion, each utter pretense. It made me feel that the editors had their heads up their asses or were being politicized into publishing in groups of power. But I just kept writing and not eating very much. Went down from 197 pounds to 137, but got very much practice typing and reading printed rejection slips. It was when I rejected 137 pounds that I said, to hell with it, quit typing, and concentrated on drinking and the streets and the ladies of the streets. At least those people didn't read Harper's, The Atlantic, or Poetry, a magazine of verse. And frankly, it was a fair and refreshing 10-year layoff. Then I came back and I tried it again to find that the editors still had their heads up their asses and or etc. But I was up to 225 pounds, rested and full of background music, ready to give it another shot in the dark. Decade of raw living only to return heavier, wiser, and still defiant. Oh yes, there are worse things than being alone, but it often takes decades to realize this. And most often, when you do, it's too late, and there's nothing worse than too late. Love this Asian thinking. Asians thinking. Asians think. Bring me some juice, Asians. Found the poem on Genius. It's full text. We should link it. Oh, we should link it. Oh. No. But the best way to experience the full collection is to grab the book itself. It's cheap, used on Kindle or at most libraries. Thank you. Grok, leader. Love this. Here's the full poem. Charles Bukowski. Whoa. They took his poems and made him into songs. Okay. The genius of the crowd. There is enough treachery, hatred, violence, absurdity in the average human being to supply any given army on any given day, and the best at murder are those who preach against it, and the best at hate are those who preach love, and the best at war finally are those who preach peace. Those who preach God need God. Oh my God. Those who preach peace do not have peace. Those who preach love do not have love. Beware the preachers. Beware the knowers. Beware those who are always reading books. Oh my God. Beware those who either detest poverty or are proud of it. Beware those quick to praise, for they need praise in return. Beware. Okay, so let's be honest. Who am I? I do talk about love because I need love, yes. Do I talk about peace? This is very interesting. Yeah, I don't know my stand on peace and violence. It's in the middle. We need both. You need violence to remember to stay sharp, to be strong. If you are just peaceful, it gets boring. You need to stay sharp, and the only way to stay sharp is fight. But fight doesn't mean you are there to kill. Fight means you are there to compete. those who preach peace. Beware the knowers. Beware those who are always reading books. Yeah, no, I don't like to always read books. Beware those who either detest poverty or are proud of it. Beware those quick to praise, for they need praise in return. Beware those who are quick to censure. They are afraid of what they do not know. Beware those who seek constant crowds. They are nothing alone. Beware the average man, the average woman. Beware their love. Their love is average, seeks average. But there is genius in their hatred. There is enough genius in their hatred to kill you, to kill anybody. Not wanting solitude, not understanding solitude, they will attempt to destroy anything that differs from their own. Not being able to create art, they will not understand art. Wow. Not being able to create art, they will not understand art. They will consider their failure as creators only as a failure of the world. Not being able to love fully, they will believe your love incomplete, then they will hate you. And their hatred will be perfect, like a shining diamond, like a knife, like a mountain, like a tiger, like hemlock, their finest art. Wow. Bluebird. Vulnerability. There's a bluebird in my heart that wants to get out, but I am too tough for him. I say, stay in there. I'm not going to let anybody see you. There's a bluebird in my heart that wants to get out, but I pour whiskey on him and inhale cigarette smoke. And the whores and the bartenders and the grocery clerks never know that he's in there. There's a bluebird in my heart that wants to get out, but I'm too tough for him. I say, stay in there, I'm not going to let anybody see you. But I pour whiskey on him and inhale cigarette smoke. And the whores and the bartenders and the grocery clerks never know that he's in there. There's a bluebird in my heart that wants to get out, but I'm too tough for him. I say, stay down. Do you want to mess me up? You want to screw up the works? You want to blow my book sales in Europe? There's a bluebird in my heart that wants to get out, but I'm too clever. I only let him out at night sometimes when everybody's asleep. I say, I know that you were there, so don't be sad. Then I put him back. But he's singing a little in there. I haven't quite let him die. And we sleep together like that with our secret pact. And it's nice enough to make a man weep, but I don't weep. Do you? That was good. That was good. Show All Songs by Charles Bukowski. Style. What's a style? Raw with love. So you want to be a writer? Alone with everybody. Love is a dog from hell. The flesh covers the bone, and they put a mind in there. The flesh covers the bone, and they put a mind in there, and sometimes the soul. The flesh covers the bone, and they put a mind in there, and sometimes the soul. And the women break vases against the walls, and the men drink too much, and nobody finds the one, but they keep looking. The flesh covers the bone, and they put a mind in there, and sometimes a soul. And the women break vases against the walls, the men drink too much, and nobody finds the one, but they keep looking, crawling in and out of beds. Flesh covers the bone, and the flesh. Wow. Wow. And nobody finds the one, but they keep looking, crawling in and out of beds. Flesh covers the bone, and the flesh searches for more than flesh. There is no chance at all. We are all trapped by a singular fate. Nobody ever finds the one. The city dumps fill, the junkyards fill, the madhouses fill, the hospitals fill, the graveyards fill. Nothing else fills. Oh my god, who's this guy? Who's this guy? Who's this guy? Bukowski. Let's go, Bukowski. Oh my god. The flesh covers the bone, and they put a mind in there, and sometimes a soul. And the women break vases against the walls, and the men drink too much, and nobody finds the one. But they keep looking, crawling in and out of beds. Flesh covers the bone, and the flesh searches for more than flesh. There's no chance at all. We're all trapped by a singular fate. Nobody ever finds the one. The city dumps fill, the junkyards fill, the madhouses fill, the hospitals fill, the graveyards fill. Nothing else fills. Nothing else. Oh my god. This guy. Style. Style is the answer to everything. A fresh way to approach a dull or dangerous thing. To do a dull thing with style is preferable to doing a dangerous thing without it. To do a dull thing with style is preferable to doing a dangerous thing without it. To do a dangerous thing with style is what I call art. Bullfighting can be an art. Boxing can be an art. Loving can be an art. Opening a can of sardines can be an art. Not many have style. Not many can keep style. I've seen dogs with more style than men, although not many dogs have style. Cats have it with abundance. When Hemingway put his brains to the wall with a shotgun, that was style. Or sometimes people give you style. Joan of Arc had style. John the Baptist, Christ, Socrates, Caesar, Garcia Garcia Lorca. I have met men in jail with style. I have met more men in jail with style than men out of jail. Style is the difference. A way of doing, a way of being done. 6 herons standing quietly in a pool of water, or you walking out of the bathroom naked without seeing me. I don't know what that means, but I think this first paragraph is, that's all you need. Style is the answer to everything. A fresh way to approach a dull or dangerous thing. To do a dull thing with style is preferable to doing a dangerous thing without it. To do a dangerous thing with style is what I call art. I have seen dogs with more style than men, although not many dogs have style. Cats have it with abundance. Cats have it with abundance. Dinosauria, it's 114, let's see. Born like this, into this, as the chalk faces smile, as Mrs. Death laughs, as the elevators break, as political landscapes dissolve, as the supermarket bag boy holds college degree, as the oily fish spit out their oily prey, as the sun is masked. We are born like this, into these carefully mad wars, into the sight of broken factory windows of emptiness, into bars where people no longer speak to each other, into fist fights that end as shootings and knifings, born into this, into hospitals which are so expensive that it's cheaper to die, into lawyers who charge so much it's cheaper to plead guilty, into a country where the jails are full and the madhouses closed, into a place where the masses elevate fools into rich heroes, born into this, walking and living through this, dying because of this, muted because of this, castrated, debauched, disinherited because of this, fooled by this, used by this, pissed on by this, made crazy and sick by this, made violent, made inhuman by this. The heart is blackened, the fingers reach for the throat, the gun, the knife, the palm. The fingers reach toward an unresponsive God. The fingers reach for the bottle, the pill, the powder. We're born into this sorrowful deadliness. We're born into a government 60 years in debt that soon will be unable to even pay the interest on that debt. And the banks will burn, money will be useless. There will be open and unpunished murder in the streets. There will be guns and roving mobs. Land will be useless. Food will become a diminishing return. Nuclear power will be taken over by the many. Explosions will continually shake the earth. Radiated robot men will stalk each other. The rich and the chosen will watch from space platforms. Dante's Inferno will be made to look like a children's playground. The sun will not be seen and it will always be night. Trees will die, all vegetation will die. Radiated men will eat the flesh of radiated men. The sea will be poisoned, the lakes and rivers will vanish. Rain will be the new gold. The rotting bodies of men and animals will stink in the dark wind. The last few survivors will be overtaken by new and hideous diseases. And the space platforms will be destroyed by attrition, the pettering out of supplies, the natural effect of general decay, and there will be the most beautiful silence never heard. Born out of that, the sun still hidden there, awaiting the next chapter. Wow. Black Sparrow. Show all songs. Cows in art class. Good weather is like good women. It doesn't always happen, and when it does, it doesn't always last. Man is more stable. If he's bad, there's more chance he will stay that way. Or if he's good, he might hang on. But a woman is changed by children, age, diet, conversation, sex, the moon, the absence or presence of sun are good times. A woman must be nourished into subsistence by love, where a man can become stronger by being hated. I'm drinking tonight in Spangler's bar. I remember the cows I once painted in art class, and they look good. They look better than anything. In here I am drinking in Spangler's bar, wondering which to love and which to hate. But the rules are gone. I love and hate only myself. They stand outside me like an orange drop from the table and rolling away. It's what I've got to decide. Kill myself or love myself, which is the treason. Where's the information coming from? Books like Broken Glass, I wouldn't wipe my ass with them. Yet, it's getting darker, see? We drink here and speak to each other and seem knowing. By the cow with the biggest tits, by the cow with the biggest rump, present arms. The bartender slides me a beer, runs down the bar like an Olympic sprinter, and the pair of pliers that is my hand stops it, lifts it, golden piss of dull temptation. I drink and stand there. The weather bad for cars, but my brush is ready to stroke up the green grass straw eye. Sadness takes me all over and drink the beer straight down, order a shot fast to give me the guts and the love to go on. Wow. What is happening? My old man. Okay, Charles Bukowski. The pattern. What connects all these stories is exactly what you identified. The creative impulse didn't come from nowhere. It was always there, suppressed by economic necessity. Grandma Moses grew with berry juice. As a child, would spend 7 decades doing farm labor. Brothers to score music in Navy, but had to assemble toilet seats for years before anyone let him record. Bukowski knew he was a writer in his 20s, but couldn't escape the postal service until his 50s. Period of emptiness or crisis, retirement, stagnation, near death, where the structure that had consumed their time fell away and they were confronted with the question of what they actually wanted to do. The answer was to create. Those decades of suppressed creative energy being available from the start, that's the world you were envisioning when you talk about abundance, freeing people to become artists. These stories suggest it's not wishful thinking, it's what actually happens when the economic constraint is removed. IA is now building Spotify itself. This might be most striking development. I haven't written a single line of code since December. Combination of Claude Code, internal system called Honk, which allows engineers to develop new features simply through Slack. The example Soderstrom gave is remarkable. An engineer on their morning commute can tell Claude from Slack on their phone to fix a bug or add a feature to the iOS app, and once Claude finishes, engineer gets a new version pushed to them on Slack to merge to production, all before arriving at the office. More than 50 new features in 2025 credits his AI-powered workflow for the speed. Prompted playlist. Searching by genre or artist, users describe what they want to hear in their own words, and the system generates a playlist informed by their listening history and what's trending in music. Let's check. What do we have? Do we have something called prompted? They started a new thing, which is les sorties à venir. They started this new thing where I think you wait for the album before it comes out. Culture Wars. Revenez et directement. Okay. There's a DJ option. There's recent, prompted by us, made for you. What is my love language? Aura Ring, soundtrack, life stages, city, streets, groove, power ride. Okay, let's see. My wrapped rewind. Oh wow, okay. So this is what they're talking about. You can kind of like prompt it. What does it say? Give me a mix of my top songs from past years' rap top songs playlist. Make it about 50 songs with a good mix from all of the previous years. Doesn't have to just be the first few songs in the playlist. Give me variety. Or 50 songs from my past years' rap top songs playlist. Généré. Cela peut prendre un moment souhaité vous quand vous informe lorsque ce sera prêt. No, give me. Wow, very interesting. Création pour passion. Requête de Spotify. Affiché. My wrapped rewind. Personnaliser. Filtering for wide appeal, varying tempos and moods. Oh, did I stop it? I think I paused it. But anyways. Livre vidéo pour vous. Nouveauté. Personnalisé. Sweet dreams. Lot of injection of, what do we say? Seems like people are uploading YouTube videos straight over here. Recommandation du jour. Very interesting. So Spotify is also doing some interesting things. Spotify always had a lot of, they always were doing they were always trying to come up with more and more fancier playlists, but now they are definitely doing more with prompted playlists. Okay. Find me one artist I haven't listened to yet, but would probably love. T's profile. Ability to edit the algorithm model of you. Possibility to setting preferences inside an AI chatbot. Recommendations miss the mark. Ensure what gets prioritized. ChatGPT integration. AI generated music policy. Shouldn't police creative tools? Are you allowed to use an electric guitar synthesizer, digital audio workstation, or AI? I don't think it is our decision to make. They're drawing lines against abuse. Removed over 75 million spammy tracks in the past year. DDEX for labeling AI generated music and credits, and are rolling out a spam filter to catch bad actors. AI as a creative tool for real artists is fine, but AI generated slop designed to game the royalty pool is not. The underlying logic trying all of this together is that music catalogs across Amazon, Apple, YouTube, and Spotify are nearly identical, so the differentiator isn't what music you have. It's how well you help people find and experience it. Very interesting. Going back to this question of people finding their art later, in later years, being late bloomer. I feel maybe you also have to go through life, you have to go through the experiences of life in order to add more character to your art, but maybe also not. You, while you're doing your art, you also can keep experiencing life. Yeah, and you're actually much better experiencing life when you are doing your art, because you are much more alive, and everything in your life, you start thinking in this way, where everything in your life must help you do your art. And I think that is much more beautiful way. You feel more alive about experiencing life, because if you are just working a job that you hate, and you might have spent 10 years over there, you might say that I have gained years of experience and years of knowledge, and that would help my art. But were you truly alive, or were you truly alive? It feels like you were just like going through the motions, and you might not be really alive. Yeah, you spent 10 years, you are 10 years older now, and you might say that you have a lot of experience, but when you are doing your art, you are much more alive, and you start looking at the world in a much interesting, better way, and you start changing things, you start making things happen, and that makes things more rich, and that makes your art more rich, that makes your experiences more rich. That was long. It was long. Claude is like, bro, what are you talking about? You're making a really important distinction that I think challenges the romantic myth of the suffering artist. You need to accumulate pain and drudgery before you have owned the right or the material to create. That narrative is seductive, but it might be largely wrong. There are two modes of moving through the world. In one, you are an autopilot, commuting, performing tasks, watching the clock, getting through the day so you can get to the weekend, so you can get to the next week. Time passes, but you are not really metabolizing your experience. You're enduring it. 10 years go by and you say, I have 10 years of experience, but really you had 1 year of experience repeated 10 times. The days blur together because nothing in you was actually receiving them. In the other mode, the mode you are describing where you are creating, you become a different kind of observer. You start noticing things, the way light hits a building, the cadence of how someone tells a lie, the specific texture of loneliness at 2 a.m. versus loneliness at a dinner party. You notice these things because your creative practice has given you a reason to notice them. Your art needs material, so your perception sharpens. You become hungry for life rather than numb to it. This is what the poet Rilke was getting at when he wrote his advice to a young poet. He essentially said that if you feel you must write, then build your life around that necessity, and everything you experience will feed it. The writing doesn't come after the living. The writing transforms how you live. The art becomes a lens, not just a product. And there's real neuroscience behind this. When people are in a state of creative engagement, their perceptual systems literally open up. They notice more peripheral details, make more unexpected connections, experience what psychologists call latent inhibition dropping. The brain's usual filtering of irrelevant information relaxes and more of the world gets in. The person walking to work while thinking about a painting they are making that evening is psychologically seeing more of the street than the person next to them who is just trying to get to the office. The point also exposes something about the Bukowski and Grandma Moses stories we discussed. We tell the stories as they suffered, then they created as though the suffering was the necessary ingredient. But look more carefully, Bukowski wasn't a good postal clerk who became a good writer. He was miserable, drunk, half dead at the post office. The use of drudgery didn't enrich him, they nearly destroyed him. What saved him was the writing, not what came before it. And Grandma Moses didn't become a great painter because she spent decades farming. She became a great painter because she had a way of seeing that was always there. The farming had nothing to do with cultivating. If anything, she created despite those decades, not because of them. The real question you're raising is about the direction of casualty. The conventional story says live first, create later. Your version says create, and that creation will teach you how to live. And I think your version is closer to the truth. The people who are most alive, the ones who seem to extract the most richness from ordinary experience, are almost always people who have some creative practice that demands they pay attention. It doesn't have to be capital A art. It can be cooking, gardening, building, writing, music, photography, conversation. The point is that you have something that requires you to be a receiver, to be open to transform what comes in into something new. And this loops back to your vision of abundance. If you wait until people have spent 40 years in jobs they hate before telling them they are free to create, you haven't given them 40 years of raw material. You have given them 40 years of numbed perception. You've trained them to not notice, to not feel, to get through. The much more radical and more humane thing is what you said at the beginning: free people early. Let them create from the start and trust that a life lived in creative engagement will generate all the experience and depth it needs. The art doesn't need the suffering. The art needs the aliveness, and the aliveness comes from the art. Find me a link to this advice. The poet Rilke was getting at when he wrote his advice to a young poet. He essentially said that if you feel you must write, then build your life around that necessity, and everything you experience will feed it. My dear sir, a letter reached me a few days ago. For the deep and living trust to reveal, I can do no more. I cannot comment on the style of your verses, critical intent. It's too far removed from my nature. There is nothing that manages to influence your work of art less than critical words. They always result in more or less unfortunate misunderstandings. Things are not as easily understood nor as expressible as people usually will like us to believe. Most happenings are beyond expression. They exist where a world has never intruded. Even more inexpressible are works of art, mysterious entities they are, whose lives compared to our fleeting ones endure. Having said these things at the outset, I now dare tell you only this, that your verses do not as yet have an individual style, yet they possess a quiet and hidden inclination to reveal something personal. I felt that very thing most notably in the last poem, My Soul. There something of your inner self wants to rise to expression, and in the beautiful poem, Tu Leopardi, something akin to greatness and bordering on uniqueness is sprouting out toward fulfillment. However, the poems cannot yet stand on their own merit, are not yet independent, not even the last one to Leopardi, not yet. In your kind letter accompanying them, you do not fail to admit to and to analyze some shortcomings which I could sense while reading your verses but could not directly put into words. You ask whether your poems are good, you send them to publishers, you compare them with other poems. You are disturbed when certain publishers reject your attempts. Well, now, since you have given me permission to advise you, suggest that you give all that up. You are looking outward and above all else that you must do now. No one can advise and help you, no one. Wow. You ask whether your poems are good. You send them to publishers. You compare them with other poems. You are disturbed when certain publishers reject your attempts. Well, now, since you have given me permission to advise you, I suggest that you give all that up. You are looking outward and above all else that you must not do now. No one can advise and help you, no one. There is only one way. Go within. Oh my god, I know we are getting into something epic. Okay. There is only one way. Go within. Search for the cause. Find the impetus that bids you right. Put it to this test. Does it stretch out its roots in the deepest place of your heart? Can you avow that you would die if you were forbidden to write? Above all, in the most silent hour of your night, ask yourself this: must I write? Dig deep into yourself for a true answer, and if it should ring its assent, if you can confidently meet the serious question with a simple I must, then build your life upon it. It has become your necessity. Your life is in even the most mundane and least significant hour must become a sign, a testimony to this urge. Then draw near to nature. Pretend you are the very first man, and then write what you see and experience, what you love and lose. Do not write love poems, at least at first. They present the greatest challenge. It requires great, fully ripened power to produce something personal, something unique, when there are so many good and sometimes even brilliant renditions in great numbers. Beware of general themes. Cling to those that your everyday life offers you. Write about your sorrows, your wishes, your passing thoughts, your belief in anything beautiful. Describe all that with fervent, quiet, and humble sincerity. In order to express yourself, use things in your surroundings, the scenes of your dreams, and the subjects of your memory. If your everyday life appears to be unworthy subject matter, do not complain to life. Complain to yourself. Lament that you are not poet enough to call up its wealth. For the creative artist, there is no poverty. Nothing is insignificant or unimportant, even if you were in a prison whose walls would shut out from your senses, the sounds of the outer world? Would you not then still have your childhood, this precious wealth, this treasure house of memories? Direct your attention to that. Attempt to resurrect these sunken sensations of a distant past. You will gain assuredness. Your aloneness will expand and will become your home, greeting you like the quiet dawn. Outer tumult will pass it from afar. If, as a result of this turning inward, of this sinking into your own world, poetry should emerge, you will not think to ask someone whether it is good poetry, and you will not try to interest publishers of magazines in these works, for you will hear in them your own voice. You will see in them a piece of your life, a natural possession of yours. A piece of art is good if it is born of necessity. This its source, it's its criterion. There is no other. Therefore, my dear friend, I know of no other advice than this. Go within and scale the depths of your being from which your very life springs forth. At its source, you will find the answer to the question whether you must write. Accept it however it sounds to you without analyzing. Perhaps it will become apparent to you that you are indeed called to be a writer. Then accept that fate, bear its burden and its grandeur, grandeur, and its grandeur, without asking for the reward which might possibly come from without. For the creative artist must be a world of his own and must find everything within himself and in nature to which he has betrothed himself. It is possible that even after your descent into your inner self and into your secret place of solitude, you might find that you must give up becoming a poet. As I've said, to feel that one could live without writing is enough indication that in fact one should not. Even then, this process of turning inward upon which I beg you to embark will not have been in vain. Your life will no doubt from then on find its own paths, that they will be good ones and rich and expansive, that I wish for you more than I can say. What else shall I tell you? It seems to me everything has been said with just the right emphasis. I wanted only to advise you to progress quietly and seriously on involvement. You could greatly interfere with that process if you look outward and expect to obtain answers from the outside, answers which only your innermost feeling in your quietest hour can perhaps give you. I was very happy to find in your writing the name of Professor Horacek. I harbor the highest regard for this kindest of scholars and owe him lasting gratitude. Would you please pass my sentiments on to him? It's very kind of him to think of me still, and I appreciate it. I am returning the verses with which you entrusted me. I thank you again for your unconditional and sincere trust. I am overwhelmed with it, and therefore have tried to the best of my ability to make myself a little more worthy than I, as a stranger to you, really am, with my sincerest interest and devotion. Whether you must write, whether you must dream, yes, whether you must dream, yes. This is beautiful. Then draw near to nature, pretend you are the very first man, and then write what you see and experience what you love and lose. Do not write love poems. You ask whether your poems are good, you send them to publishers, you compare them with other poems, you are disturbed when certain publishers reject your attempts. Well, now, since you have given me permission to advise you, I suggest that you give all that up. You're looking outward, and above all else, you must not do now. No one can advise and help you. No one. There's only one way. Go within, search for the cause, find the impetus that bids you write. Put it to the test. Put it to this test. Does it stretch out its roots in the deepest place of your heart, can you avow that you would die if you were forbidden to write above all? In the most silent hour of your night, ask yourself this: must I write? Dig deep into yourself for a true answer, and if it should ring its assent, if you can confidently meet this serious question with a simple I must, then build your life upon it. It has become your necessity. Your life is even the most mundane and least significant hour must become a sign, a testimony to this urge. As a result of this turning inward, of this sinking into your own world, poetry should emerge. You will not think to ask someone whether it is good poetry, and you will not try to interest publishers or magazines in these works, for you will hear them in your own voice. You will see in them a piece of your life, a natural possession of yours. A piece of art is good if it is born of necessity. Go within and scale the depths of your being from which your very life springs forth. At its source, you will find the answer to the question whether you must write. Bear its burden and its grandeur without asking for the reward which might possibly come from without. For the creative artist must be a world for his own and must find everything within himself and in nature to which he has betrothed himself. Wow. Okay. Let's go. I'm really inspired by the idea of sacred economy or the gifting economy. Give me some very practical examples of how I can apply the ideas of gift economy in my current life with my friends, family, everyone who's around me. I even encourage others to do the same. I love to give a lot of context, give as much context as possible, and then Claude comes back, and Claude is like, "Let's go." There's a beautiful thread to pull on, and it connects directly to everything we have been discussing: community, shared meals, creativity, abundance. Charles Eisenstein's is probably the best single articulation of these ideas, and his core insight is that monetary transactions don't create bonds, but gift transactions do. And that's what makes gifts sacred. I don't want to be tied to you. I don't want to have a relationship with you. Charles Eisenstein. Wow. A long piece. Now suppose you're the CEO of Earth and you are absolute dictator. Extraterrestrials come and they say we would like to buy Earth and we are going to make it worth your while. Gross world product right now is $60 trillion per year. How would you like $10 quadrillion right now? Why? The interest on that alone is way more than $60 trillion per year. You'll be rich. We're going to buy the planet from you. We're going to destroy the atmosphere. We are going to pollute the oceans. We are going to destroy the planet. We're going to mine it and build a big amusement park in another galaxy with the raw materials. So, do you want to say yes to this deal? Obviously not. But we are saying yes to this deal collectively. And it's driven by the money system. But if money has negative interest, then you would rather have $1 million per year in perpetuity rather than $100 million right now. Those are just two little examples of how to align money with what has become sacred to us. Make wealth be a matter of how much you give, not how much you keep. What would money have to look like to obey the law of ecology? That there is no waste, that's everything you create, that everything you create needs to be focused for, need to be food for something else. How can we create an economic system that embodies those truths? It's not a rhetorical question. And then you fall in love, and this love relationship is different from the relationship of a child to a parent, because you no longer just want to receive, you also want to give. As a teenager, you want to give something to your sweetie, and then you want to go create, and that's what humanity now is moving into. Starting in the 60s, when the environmental movement was born into mass consciousness, and people wanted to protect Earth and give back to Earth. It happened when the astronauts beamed down those photographs of the planet. It was the first time that most people saw Earth without borders drawn on it. People had never seen that before. It's almost a cliche image, planet Earth. But even today it arouses some kind of wonder and reverence. When it first came down, it was a revelation to people. The astronauts felt it. They all fell in love too. I was up there. I didn't see any borders on Earth, and I felt an overwhelming desire to protect this planet. And I felt this is called the which effect? The overwhelm effect? I forgot the name. We read about this. And I felt love for every person on the planet. I could cover the Earth with my thumb. I realized that everything precious to me was on that little dot. All of literature, all of music, everybody I love, all of history, all of human striving is on this little fragile dot. Those are things that we are attracted to now. We're no longer attracted to the conquest from nature. Unfortunately, institutions haven't caught up to this shift, especially the institution of money. It still embodies separation and assent to it, compels both. We think that maybe humans are just bad, we are nature's mistake, we forgot something important, we are destroying the earth because of it. Some radical writers say that Derek Jensen, Jean Zerzan, they say agriculture was a big mistake, or even symbolic culture. Language was a big mistake. It began to separate us, and we became more and more separate from nature, and now we have almost destroyed it. We should go back to being hunter-gatherers. Exponential growth, that doesn't happen in nature. Neighbors chatting with each other over the fence, helping each other out, these things that were left over from my childhood. I got this suburban development, and the first thing I noticed is that there were no kids outside. There was a big playground in the middle of the neighborhood, and it was empty. When I was a kid, that place would have been packed. There would have been kickball games and baseball games and football games and kids on bikes everywhere. It was gone. It wasn't because there weren't any kids. They were all indoors. All of the neighbors know each other. We try to create community, we try to invite people to our house and have mixers, but people weren't really that interested in coming. No strong relationships were created. What happened to that? What happened to community? Everywhere I go, people tell me that community is what's missing most of from their lives. What happened to it is that community got converted into money. I mentioned how gifts create ties, they create bond. If you live a highly monetized life, there are no gifts, there are no bonds. You don't really need anybody. So we had our neighborhood mixer, and everybody knew, I don't need you. Unlike an Amish community where you need people. If your house burns down, you need them to help you rebuild your house. And we pay for that kind of community support. It's called insurance. When I was a kid, no one really paid for childcare. Everybody watched everybody else's kids. But now that's something that you pay for. And as that becomes a paid service, the economy grows, creates opportunities to lend money for money to circulate. That's part of the explanation that all the good things you want to do, there's no money in those. And the places where there is money is something you really don't want to do. I'm generalizing a little, but I think you will understand this dynamic in our system. Money goes to those who will create more of it, to those who will create new goods and services. Bank, I got $1 million to lend. You come to me and say, Charles, I'd like to borrow that money, and I'm going to spend it all on stopping that pipeline from the Alberta tar sands. That's my business plan. If I want to, I'm not going to lend you that money, because how are you going to pay me back? Or maybe you're going to say there's some land that's going to be developed. I'm going to save that land. I'm going to buy that land so that it's not developed. And I'll say, how are you going to make money to pay me back? Well, if you want me to pay you back, I can sell the land again. But what about my interest? You have to create even more money. If you come to me and say, I would like to buy the land and build a strip mall there, oh, then you're going to be making new goods and services. Setting up a lobbying organization so I can help get that pipeline built. Here's my Rolex of context. These firms will pay me lots of money to do this. All I need is some capital. Now there's a business plan, because you're participating in the conversion of the Albertan tundra into money. If you participate in that, you get money. But I think it's important to remember that we did once want to participate in that. 100 years ago, we had no problem with the conquest of nature. And if you invented a way to get that oil out faster and to cut down those trees more efficiently, then you were a hero. You felt good about yourself, but not anymore. Something has changed. What has changed? The economic crisis is also a spiritual crisis. It's something that goes all the way to the bottom. Wow. Tell me more about the idea that the current economic crisis is also a spiritual crisis. Gift transactions do, and that's what makes gifts sacred. In ancient gift societies, to refuse a gift was considered a hostile act. Gifts create circles. Give to someone, they give to someone else, comes back to you. With food, rotating dinner among your friend group, not a potluck where everybody brings something. That's a transaction. Everyone calculating their contribution. Instead, one person hosts and cooks for everyone. Next time, someone else does. No tracking, no scorekeeping. The gift is the meal and the evening together. That's literally the Danish model applied to an existing friend group. You could start with once a month and see what happens. The person cooking gives fully. The people eating receives fully. Over time, this creates exactly the kind of bond that splitting a restaurant bill never does. If you cook or bake, start giving food to neighbors without occasion. Not for their birthday, not because they did something for you, just because you made too much soup or you baked extra bread or you thought of them. The absence of occasion is what makes it a gift rather than a social obligation. It also opens a channel. Once someone has received unexpected food from you, a relationship exists that didn't before. Offering these goods to people in your circle without framing it as a favor to be returned. I'm good at this. You need this. Let me do it. Not, I'll help you with your resume if you help me move. The gift economy runs on the trust that generosity circulates, not on direct reciprocity. You could formalize this slightly by organizing a skill share within your community. Once a month, someone teaches what they know, cooking a specific cuisine, basic car maintenance, meditation, how to use a particular software, how to grow herbs. The teaching is free. The knowledge flows. People who would never have connected discover they need each other. Writing, music, art, photography, anything, start giving some of it away. Not as marketing, not as a lost leader, but as a genuine gift. Himself practices the sacred economics published under a Creative Commons copyright, and the full text is available free online. His model for events and workshops involves offering them on a gift basis where people pay what they feel the value was rather than a fixed price. Yes, obviously, that's even better business because because most people can join, and those few people who truly believe that who have the money and who truly found a lot of value will actually pay you more. So it actually makes so much sense. You are taking leverage of the exponential idea. People pay what they feel the value was, rather than a fixed price. You can apply this to small things. Write a poem for someone. Make a playlist that's generally curated for a specific friend, specific moment. Not an algorithm, but your attention and care crystallize into a sequence of songs. Take a photograph you think someone will love and print it for them. The creative gift is powerful precisely because it can be bought. It contains your time, your attention, your understanding of the other person. With possessions and tools, start a lending culture in your circle. Tools, books, camping gear, kitchen equipment, clothing. Most of what people own sits unused 95% of the time, rather than everyone buying their own drill or their own bread maker. Create a norm where things circulate. This isn't a formal tool library, though those are great. It's just the habit of saying, I have one, take it, instead of you should buy one. One is commerce, the other is connection. With attention and presence, this might be the most undervalued gift in modern life. Generally listening to someone not while checking your phone, not while formulating your response, but actually receiving what they're saying is a profound gift. In an economy where attention is constantly being extracted and sold, choosing to give yours freely to another person is almost a radical act. If a friend is making art or music or writing, become their patron. Patron in a small way. Buy their work, commission something, contribute to their practice. This is gift economy applied within capitalism. You are using money, but the spirit behind it is I want you to keep creating rather than I am purchasing a product. The honest answer is that you mostly encourage others by doing it yourself and letting people experience what it feels like. Eisenstein's fundamental insight is that the spirit of the gift responds to needs. When a gift truly meets a need, gratitude naturally rises, and that gratitude becomes the engine that keeps the cycle going. You don't need to convince people of philosophy. You need to give them the experience of being genuinely given to without strings, and let the natural human response to generosity do its work. Most more ideas to sit with runs through everything we have been talking about today. Communal living to the kibbutz, to Marx, to art, to the gift economy, the conversion of life into money. Each tree cut down and made into paper, each idea captured and made into intellectual property, each child who uses video games instead of creating worlds of the imagination, each human relationship turned into a paid service. Wow, this reminds me of Project Genie. Project Genie. Pause the screen for a bit. Just sign up over here. Wow. Project Genie is not available in your country. Oh my god. Let's go back. Each human relationship turned into a paid service depletes a bit of the natural, cultural, spiritual, and social commons and converts it into money. The economy grows by taking things that were once free: community, childcare, cooking, entertainment, nature, human connection, and turning them into products and services you pay for. Community, childcare, cooking, entertainment, nature, human connection. Think about what this means concretely. 100 years ago, if you were sad, your neighbor came over with food and sat with you. Now you pay a therapist. That's not a criticism of therapy. Therapy is valuable, but the shift from communal care to purchased care is also a loss. The neighbor who sat with you was embedded in a web of mutual obligation and love. Therapist, however good, is exchanging a service for money. The relationship ends when the payment stops. Multiply this across every domain of life: food, child care, elder care, entertainment, education, spiritual guidance, conflict resolution. And you get a society where nearly every human need is met through a market transaction. The economic system grows, GDP rises, yet people feel more isolated, more anxious, more empty than ever. Entertainment, education, spiritual guidance, conflict resolution. And you get a society where nearly every human need is met through a market transaction. Captures this brilliantly. We in the richer societies have too many calories, even as we starve for beautiful fresh food. We have over large houses but lack spaces that truly embody our individuality and connectedness. Wow. We in the richest societies have too many calories, even as we starve for beautiful fresh food. We have over large houses but lack spaces that truly embody our individuality and connectedness. Media surround us everywhere while we starve for authentic communication. We're offered entertainment every second of the day but lack the chance to play. The material needs are overfulfilled while the spiritual needs for belonging, for meaning, for genuine connection, for creative expression go unmet. For belonging, for meaning, for genuine connection, for creative expression go unmet. The crisis of belonging. Deep at the root of the crisis of civilization is a crisis of belonging. Because of the dissolving of community, people don't know who they are, since our identity is built from our relationships. In most places on earth, a person would know every single person they saw in every land form and the stories behind it. The modern economy, modern technology, and the categorizing of everything by science have all pushed us apart, replacing our dependencies on each other with dependencies on vast impersonal processes. It's the spiritual crisis disguised as an economic one, when you don't need your neighbor for anything because you can buy everything. You need from strangers mediated by money, then your neighbor becomes irrelevant. And when everyone around you is irrelevant to your survival, you become irrelevant to theirs. That mutual irrelevance is the loneliness epidemic. When you don't need your neighbor for anything because you can buy everything you need from strangers mediated by money, then your neighbor becomes irrelevant. And when everyone around you is irrelevant to your survival, you become irrelevant to theirs. That mutual irrelevance is a loneliness epidemic. Is the reason people in the wealthiest societies on earth report feeling that their lives lack meaning. You can't buy meaning. Meaning arises from being needed, from giving your gifts, from mattering to specific people in specific ways. The market economy systematically destroys the conditions under which meaning naturally arises. There's something deeper here too. The economic system doesn't just create material scarcity, it creates a psychological and spiritual experience of scarcity, even amid abundance. You can have a full refrigerator, a closet of clothes, and a house full of possessions and still feel a gnawing sense of not enough. That's because the system trains you to experience the world through the lens of scarcity. There isn't enough money, enough time, enough security, enough status. You must compete, accumulate, protect what's yours. The mindset becomes so pervasive that people can't even imagine an alternative. The idea that you could just give things away, that you could trust others to take care of you, that abundance is the natural state, This sounds naive or dangerous to someone whose entire nervous system has been shaped by scarcity. Well, this is exactly what spiritual traditions across the world have always said. The Buddhist teaching that suffering arises from attachment and craving, the Christian teaching that you cannot serve both God and money, the indigenous understanding that the land provides and that wealth means having much to give, the Hindu concept of dhan, selfless giving as spiritual practice. These aren't just moral instructions, they are descriptions of how reality works when you are not distorted by the scarcity lens. As Eisenstein puts it, our lives are given to us. Our default state is gratitude. For the first years of life, everything was a gift. Someone held us, fed us, took care of us. Nothing was earned. The economic system teaches us to forget this foundational experience and replace it with belief that we are separate, competing individuals who must own the right to exist. The economic system teaches us to forget this foundational experience and replace it with the belief that we are separate, competing individuals who must own the right to exist. Why the economic crisis keeps returning. Eisenstein argues that the economic crisis we experience are not isolated problems but part of a convergence of crises in energy, education, health, water, soil, climate, politics, and the environment, all traceable to a common root he calls separation. It requires perpetual growth because of how money is created through interest bearing debt, but perpetual growth requires perpetually converting more of the living world, nature, community, culture, attention into commodities. More of the living world, nature, community, culture, attention into commodities. At some point, you run out of commons to enclose. That's the crisis. It's not a technical failure of financial engineering, it's the inevitable endpoint of a system that treats everything sacred as raw material to be converted into profit. Conversion crisis is a kind of birth crisis, expelling us from the old world into a new one. He writes that many people sense a spiritual dimension to the planetary crisis, even to the economic crisis, a sense that normal isn't coming back, that we are being born into a new kind of society, a new relationship to the earth, a new experience of being human. How this connects to everything we have discussed. Look at the thread of our entire conversation. You start by saying the grocery supply chain is solving a problem we create for ourselves. That's the separation story. Then build enormous systems to bridge the gap we created. You propose communal means a solution. That's the gift economy in its most primal form. Food shared freely. We talked about the Danish co-housing model, which works because it embeds generosity. It systematically undermines the condition for meaning, belonging, creativity, and genuine connection. The spiritual crisis isn't separate from economic crisis, they are the same crisis viewed from different angles. Creativity, genuine connection. A powerful way to unleash your creativity. We are spiritually broken because the economy has been designed in a way that fragments our relationships, commodifies our gifts, and teaches us that we are separate. If the material problem is solved, if people's basic needs are met without requiring them to sell their time and creativity on the market, and the spiritual healing can begin. People can start giving again, creating again, belonging again, not because a policy told them to, but because that's what humans do when the economic pressure is removed. The gift economy isn't something we need to invent, something we need to stop suppressing. Alright, that's it. That's the stream. Merci.